Alright, we are finally back to doing this. It's only taken a light 6 months of getting this to work again. Basically, I've moved computers now. I had like a very dinky little laptop before, and it refused to run any recording software properly. So I've got a new one now, so I can actually record these videos again, and hopefully get them out at a much more regular pace. Same rules as last time and everything. Same tiers, should be all unchanged from last time. So let's just get started with Chikorita, who is definitely one of the starters of all time. I get it's like a first stage, so its design probably isn't going to be that interesting. But even in comparison to like most of the other first stage grass type starters, I still find this thing pretty boring. And that's not to mention that it just sucks in general. Like, not only... I'll get into that more with Meganium, actually. I'll save that. Bayleef, I think is a natural improvement of the design. I think it's solid. I'd put it about right above Machoke. I think Bayleef is solid design. For most of like the middle and first stage Pokemon, I'm just gonna have to rely on their design to rate them, because for the most part they're not really meant to be used in competitive or battle much at all. Meganium is honestly kind of a downgrade. I feel like it loses a lot about Bayleef that I liked, like the leaf on the top of the head in favor of the antenna is a weird choice, and I don't know how to feel about the flower either. And this thing is just like gameplay wise, it is probably the worst starter ever of all time. Not even probably, it is absolutely the worst starter of all time. Not only is it unusable and competitive in like most games where you do have access to it, in its own home game where you get it as a starter, it is awful. There is not like a single battle in the game where it is an advantage to pick Meganium. Like, you are actively putting yourself at a disadvantage if you pick this thing. It's not good. And big contrast, Cyndaquil is good. I'm a big fan of Cyndaquil. I'd put him there. I think it's a very solid design for a first stage starter. Got plenty of personality, and yeah, it's just very nice. Quilava, however, I like Quilava just because I like the Cyndaquil line in general. I'm going to be biased towards everything, but it does have problems. It's also just kind of a boring design. Like, there's just not a lot going on here. It feels like a natural progression of Cyndaquil. It makes sense that it looks like this, but it's still just not too interesting. And the same kind of applies for regular Typhlosion. So I do like it a lot still, because I've used it a bunch. I feel like they just could have done more with the design. Like, even Quilava had fire on its tail, and Typhlosion just loses that. When its fire isn't active, it just looks like a cartoon badger. And even when the fire is active, it's still not the greatest. I definitely feel like they could have done more with it. And in contrast again, Hisuian Typhlosion is a huge improvement. Fire Ghost is a very cool typing. As you can see, it's right next to another Fire Ghost type. And I think the design with the fire is just a lot cooler. Even the tail is more different there, as it being all squiggly. And also Typhlosion exists, so that gives it extra points. Totodile, I think, is pretty nice. I like Totodile quite a bit. I'm about there, I think. I'm higher than that. Croconaw, I'm also a fan of. Probably not as much as Totodile, but I do like it. I like the caveman kind of aesthetic going on with it. And for Alligator, I also like. I do wish it kept the whole caveman thing going on though. Kind of feel like it's just abandoned that altogether. But still a very solid design. Now here we go. With the with Gen 2 Pokemon, there's a lot of just really trash Pokemon in this. So there's gonna be a lot of mid tiers and low tiers. Starting with Sentret, like it's just got nothing. It's just got like nothing going on for it. I just don't really feel much of anything for Sentret at all. Furret I like it a little bit more. This thing is like way bigger than you'd probably think it is, by the way. This thing is like 4 or 5 feet long. I mean, it's okay. Furret's okay. I like that they gave it Tidy Up in the new gens. Yeah. Hoothoot, I think, is definitely an improvement over Pidgey. I definitely think that's for sure. And I like the kind of clock motif going on with it, with the clock hands on the eyes. Sorry. Yeah, I think Hoothoot's a pretty nice design. Noctowl, however, kind of loses that, and it's kind of just an owl. There's just not much going on here. It falls back into what Pidgey and Pidgeot and all were. I don't hate it, but it's not very good, and also it's a Johto Pokemon, so of course it's really bad in battle. Ledyba. This is a cartoon ladybug, and that's about it. Ledian. This is one of the funniest Pokemon of all time. By far one of the funniest. Someone at Game Freak hates this thing. It started off already with a god-awful stat spread. Where it does like no damage. It has really high special defense for some reason. It sits around and does nothing in battle the entire time. And then they had the gall to give it Iron Fist with its, what, 35 attack stat? So it's gonna go from like doing 10 damage a hit to 15. It's a huge increase. This thing is awful. This is a terrible Pokemon. The design is okay, but it's not gonna save it from just how horrifically bad it is. Spinarak, kind of the counterpart to Ledyba, is a much better design. I like how the little face on its butt kind of changes expression. I don't know if that's new for Scarlet and Violet, but that's when I noticed it for the first time, because I never paid attention to Spinarak if I could help it. Ariados, I think, is a cool design. Although it's really not a spider, because it doesn't even have 8 legs. I mean, it's a cool design, cool enough. But it's also just a terrible Pokemon. It's got a bit more sauce than Ledian. Like a bit more sauce than Ledian. It's even got its own signature move. But it's still not good. Saying all this, they're gonna give Ledian like a Mega or something in Legends EA. Let's see. Crobat is probably the second best Pokemon ever made. I love this thing. I already liked Zubat. Golbat, I don't really care much for. But Crobat is awesome. I like its stats. I like that it can potentially be run as a mixed attacker. It's not got the worst special attack. I like its typing. It's still a unique typing to this day. There's still no other flying poison types. And this is like one of the few friendship evolutions that I like, because Golbat isn't that bad to use. Okay, moving on. Chinchou, I think is a very cool design. And also a very cool typing to go along with it. Not many water electric types, I don't think. I think it might just be Chinchou, Lanturn, and Rotom Wash. unless I'm forgetting something, which I probably am. But I do really like Chinchou's design. The plus eyes, I think, are a pretty good touch. Lanturn, don't like as much design-wise. Feel like there's a lot of empty space there they could have done something with, but a pattern there. But I still like it. It's mostly carried by the design because its stats also aren't great. This doesn't do very much damage. It has high HP though, which is something. It's a choice. This little rat. I hate this thing. There's not, apart from Charizard, nothing's going lower than this little vermin. I cannot stand this Pokemon. So Gen 2, right? Introduced some new evolution methods, one of which being friendship. I mentioned with Crobat earlier. It's gonna take a lot to move out of like these lower tiers if you're a friendship evolution, because it is one of the most annoying processes in the entire series. And then, not to mention, it's also a baby Pokemon also introduced in Gen 2, which is one of the worst things to have ever happened to Pokemon. I believe personally, because it took a bunch of Pokemon, Pikachu, Raichu, Clefable, and all them, stuff that could have potentially gotten a third evolution, and they wasted a slot on these little babies that don't do anything and are just annoying stages in the evolution line. And most of them are also friendship evolutions, so which is just awesome. And Pichu, speaking of wasted potential and wasted slots, is in Super Smash Bros., which is one of the, I think, maybe one of the worst inclusions. Not maybe, it is one of the worst inclusions. I don't know if it is the worst, though. There might be worse, but I think it's one of the dumbest and laziest inclusions in the entire series. Like, if you want another Pokemon in Melee, add Meowth or something, anything interesting, just not this little rat. Just takes up a slot that could have gone to something better. And just like in the main series, it takes up a slot in the Pikachu line that could have gone to a Raichu evolution, like Gorishu or something, this old scrapped Raichu evolution. But no, instead we're stuck with this dumbass little rat. I can't stand it. It's a horrible Pokemon and symbolizes everything I hate about Johto. Cleffa is also bad because it's a baby Pokemon with friendship evolution, and it's just a smaller Clefairy. Igglybuff is a little bit better. It's still a baby friendship evolution, but its design isn't just a small Jigglypuff. It's a little bit different. Togepi, I'll give a pass for being a baby Pokemon, because it was introduced alongside its evolutions, not retroactively added to a pre-existing line. And I think its design is pretty nice, too. Togepi is a solid little Pokemon. Togetic is not worth the friendship evolution, at least not until Togekiss exists. I don't know how they thought this thing was finished back in Gen 2, because it's terrible. But I will say, leaving it off there makes it sound like I hate it. I don't hate Togetic. I think it's just really bad to use, but it does get Serene Grace, which is a cool ability. I think its design is pretty neat, and I think the typing is pretty cool. At least after Gen 6, where it got the Fairy type, because it just being a normal flying type was very, very lame. Natu, the Angry Bird. I like Natu. It's also got a cool typing, Flying Psychic. There's a lot more than those, a lot more of those than you think there are, but still like it. Xatu, I also like. I think it's got a pretty cool design. The totem pole aspect of it is very cool, and I hope this thing gets like an evolution or something someday, because it needs it. It needs it. I feel like there's a lot of potential with the design there. Mareep. I'm a big fan of Mareep. Big Mareep fan. Flaaffy. I also like quite a bit. Probably not quite as much as Mareep, so maybe a bit less. But I still like it. And Ampharos. Now the reason I like this line so much is because it's one of the few good, reliable Pokemon you can get. That comes from Gen 2. So many of the Pokemon are garbage, but Ampharos is a gem among that garbage. And it's just a pretty cool design too. I like Ampharos. Get here at the end. Bellossom? Bellossom was a choice for sure. Not entirely sure why they made this. I don't hate it, but going from with Gloom, it's a split evolution. You can go to Bellossom or Vileplume. And the problem is, Gloom is already a grass poison type, and then just loses the poison typing altogether. It just becomes pure grass when you choose Bellossom. Which, I feel like losing a stab for like no extra benefit, except for losing like a 1 weakness, is... I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know what exactly it gets over Vileplume. Maybe, I know it gets Quiver Dance. I don't think Vileplume gets that. But yeah, I find it hard to justify ever getting Bellossom over Vileplume. The design is neat though, I do like the design. Marill, I like Marill. Put it about there. Big Marill fan. And Azumarill, I'm an even bigger fan of. Most of what I like about Azumarill has come from Scarlet and Violet, where, at least before I was able to get Arceus in the game, where I used it for Terror Raids pretty much all the time. It's just a very fun Pokemon to use. Belly Drum, huge power, Aqua Jet is ridiculously strong, and with the actual math, I think this thing has a higher attack stat than several legendaries when it has huge power. It's deceptively powerful. I really like that about Azumarill. Sudowoodo, also a big fan of. I think it does the roadblock thing a bit better than Snorlax. So I do still like Snorlax. Don't remember where I put him. But I'd like Sudowoodo a bit more. Just a goofy guy. Politoed almost falls into the same camp as Bellossom, but Poliwhirl, what it evolves from, is already a pure water type. It's only Poliwrath that's water fighting, so it's not as egregious. And there are actually plenty of benefits to Politoed over Poliwrath, mainly Drizzle, which is funny that this random frog can just summon a rainstorm anytime it switches in. I like Politoed. I like him quite a bit. Hoppip. I look at this Pokemon and I don't feel much of anything. Same for Skiploom, and it's actually kind of uglier. I'll put a Pidgeotto. Jumpluff, I think, is a decent improvement. I like that it's mainly a support Pokemon with Chlorophyll, Sleep Powder, Tailwind. Like, it can be fun to use, but it's still not very good. And the design is just kind of meh. Apom. Here's going to be a common trend of Johto Pokemon. There's a lot of single-stage Pokemon that they went back and gave evolutions to later. And for pretty much all of them, I don't know how they ever thought that just leaving them at those stages was good. I don't know how they thought they were a complete design. This thing... I like Apom. I like Apom a pretty good amount. I like the hand thing it's got. But I just don't understand how they thought this was a finished design for, what, like 6-7 years, however long it was between Gold and Silver and Diamond and Pearl. Sunkern. I don't feel much of anything towards Sunkern. very bottom of there. And Sunflora is a waste of a Sunstone. This thing needs... I think this thing would be better for just to have a stat increase and probably give it Drought and a Fire type. Like it probably should have gotten. Because as is, Sunflora is awful. Genuinely awful. And just not worth a Sunstone. Yanma, same camp as Apom. I like its design. Actually, I like it quite a bit more. But it's still just okay-ish. And another thing, I don't know how they thought this was a finished design. I don't know what Game Freak was smoking when they were making the Gen 2 games. But they do have gems like Wooper. Very rare gems like Wooper. I love Wooper. Anyone who doesn't love Wooper probably shouldn't be trusted. Wooper is awesome. Same for Paldean Wooper. I feel about the same toward both of them, and same for Quagsire. I like Quagsire a little bit less than Wooper, though it's still pretty good. Espeon. These are both friendship evolutions. Espeon and Umbreon are, so that's going to knock them down a bit. But I do like Espeon. I think it can be pretty fun to use, and I like the design. Not my favorite evolution, but it's a pretty good one. Umbreon, however, its design is cool. It's a friendship evolution, so that's annoying. But fighting against this thing is one of the most obnoxious things that you can ever come across in the series. This thing's playstyle is degenerate, and I really hate that, but the design saves it a bit. Murkrow, I'd put somewhere in the same camp as Apom and Yanma. Put it somewhere in between, because I do like its design quite a bit. I think it's pretty cool. Slowking. Now, unlike Slowbro, the Slowbros up here, I've never really felt much towards Slowking. I don't know why. Never really clicked for me. I still like it, because it's related to Slowbro. But I never really felt that strongly towards it. Galarian Slowking, I like more. But not much more. Maybe I just haven't got the chance to use these things very much. Maybe if I use them more, my opinion on them will change. Mischievous, same camp as these guys. Though I do like Mischievous's design a bit. It's like a little more justifiable as a single stage. Not by much, but a little bit more. Unknown. Unknown is a really cool concept for a Pokemon. Being like very, very weak by itself, but like godlike levels of powers and groups. I think Unknown would just go up here next to Ditto. That's about the same thing. It's not very applicable in battle. Well, Ditto's more applicable, but Unknown is not. But the like concept and lore of Unknown is really cool. Hard carries it. Wobbuffet, I'm a decent fan of. I think it's pretty funny to use, because it exists to literally just be a punching bag. It is literally a punching bag. And that's pretty funny. I'd put it right there. Kind of wish it was in Scarlet and Violet so I could have gotten a chance to use it more. Because I haven't really gotten into the whole battling aspect, like the competitive aspect of Pokemon, until pretty recently with Scarlet and Violet. And I would have really liked a chance to use this thing some. Girafarig. I've always been a fan of Girafarig. Not the biggest fan, but giraffes were my favorite animal in real life for most of my life. So I've always liked Girafarig, and the whole split half thing with the head at the back of the body is pretty cool. And Normal Psychic is actually a pretty cool typing, one of the few times where Normal doesn't hinder the other type. Pineco. If you know, you know.
Hey guys.
That's all I'm gonna say. If you know, you know. Fortress is cool. Probably just Bullet Pine Coat. I think its design is pretty neat. Bug Steel is it's one of my favorite type combinations, if not my favorite. Because it's good and it's the bug type, which is one of my favorite types. The whole, like, cannons coming out of the side thing is a pretty cool aspect of the design, because it's literally a fortress with cannons coming out. And I've always thought that's cool. And it can be fun to use too. Dunsparce! Dunsparce! Now, I can understand why this thing went unevolved for so long, because the entire point of Dunsparce is to be a rare Pokemon that is not worth finding at all. It's just rare for the sake of being rare. And I've always found that really funny. But it does also get Serene Grace as an ability, which is cool. Body Slam has an increased chance to paralyze, and Air Slash has an increased chance to flinch, and the rest is history. It's obnoxious. I kind of like it for that. Gligar. Compared to Gliscor later, whenever we get to Gen 4, Gligar, honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of. I still like it, because Ground Flying is a cool type and all, but it's never really clicked like Gliscor has for me. Steelix, I think, is a huge improvement over Onix. Much cooler design, cooler typing, much more unique typing too. Never been the biggest fan of it, but I do like it. It's a big improvement. Later, Snubbull. This is one of the weirder Pokemon that they gave the Fairy type to. Like, is it just because it's pink? I don't really get why they did it. I like it, but it's a weird choice. And Granbull, like a little bit less. I mean, I just don't really feel much towards either of these. I think Granbull's design could have had a little bit more spice to it. But other than that, it's fine enough. Quillfish. Regular old Quillfish. I would probably put in between coughing and wheezing. Because it exists. It exists. It can be fun to use as, like, just an annoyance with Intimidate or Poison Point. Either one of those is good. Toxic Spikes. It's good enough. Hisuian Quillfish I like a lot more. Dark Poison is a much cooler typing. And what little does change on the design I think is neat. I like the color scheme more. And the lowercase q on the tail is neat. Yeah, I like Hisuian Quillfish. Scizor is a really cool Pokemon. I don't think there's a single person on this planet who doesn't think Scizor is awesome. Never been huge on the Scyther line, but I do like all of its evolutions. Let's see. See you later. Shuckle. Don't fuckle with Shuckle, am I right? Heracross is awesome. Probably my favorite bug type from this gen. Put him there. He gets Guts, which is a cool ability, and he also gets Moxie, which is also a cool ability. It's just fun to use, and Bug Fighting is a really cool typing. Pretty much everything that's a Bug Fighting type is guaranteed to be cool. I don't even know if there are any exceptions. I don't think there are. Bug Fighting is one of the better typings. Continue later. Sneasel. I give Sneasel a much bigger pass than the rest of these for being a single stage for so long, because this definitely feels like it could have been more of one. Or maybe that's just my bias, because of Weavile talking. But I do like Sneasel. Put him about there. Dark Ice is a really cool typing, and it's good that it's fast, because if it wasn't fast, it would not be a very good Pokemon remotely. Hisuian Sneasel, I think I feel about equal to. Fighting Poison, less of a cool typing, but I kind of like the color scheme on this one a little bit more. So I do kind of feel like this thing should have been a poison ice type. Still don't have one of those. I feel like this one would have made sense, but I'm honestly fine with it being fighting poison. Teddy Ursa, o Colero, se tu fatti falsbar. Up there. I mean, the moon on its forehead is cute. Actually, I'll put it up here. I like the moon on its head. It's neat, but it's not the most interesting design. And Ursa Ring definitely loses that spice to it. It's kind of just a bear with a circle on its chest. I don't hate it, but it's a downgrade, I think. Slugma balls. Magcargo. I think this thing has a really cool design. However, Slugma evolves at what, level 38? You're stuck with a Slugma for 38 levels until you get this thing, which is already a crime. And then when you get Magcargo, it's still not good, like in battle at least. I'm gonna put it around here because it's hard carried by the design. Because in battle, that thing sucks. Swinub. There's been a video going around recently on Twitter of some anime or something, and there's an animation of someone breaking open bread, and the bread looks identical to Swinub, and that's about the only relevance Swinub has had for the past forever, as long as it's existed. But I like Swinub. It's cool enough. That's about the only interesting thing that I have to say about Swinub. Piloswine is a little worse, I think. I wonder if they ever knew that they were going to turn this thing into like a mammoth pig later, like Mamoswine, or if that was just like a big coincidence, or if that was not a coincidence, something they just kind of thought of later. But yeah, and this is another one of those things where I don't know how they thought this was a finished design. This just screams that it has a third evolution, but it doesn't, or it didn't for several years until Mamoswine came later. Corsola. Again, I just don't feel anything for this thing, really. Water Rock is not the most interesting typing. The design is cute, but nothing special. Galarian Corsola, I like a bit more. Pure Ghost is a missed opportunity, I think. This thing definitely could have been a Ghost Rock type, considering we don't have one still somehow. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's cool. Remoraid. Fun fact, this thing is based on a gun. It's kind of hard to tell in the design. But I think that's really funny, and that gets some points. And then Octillery, not likewise, but similarly, is based on a tank, which also is not very clear in the design. What about there? I used one in Legends Arceus, and I did not realize just how insane that thing's coverage was. It was pretty useful throughout the game. By the way, the tank and gun aspect of the design is much more clear in their beta sprites. I can see why they changed the Remoraid, because just having like a gun that is literally just a fish is maybe pushing it a little too far. I think they could have done something more to make it look more like a gun. And then Octillery's whole design is just straight up better, in my opinion. But I don't hate the current one. Delibird is a really funny Pokemon because it's atrocious. But its abilities, it gets Insomnia and Vital Spirit, I think. One of them is its hidden ability, which is a waste because they both do the literal exact same thing. And then its other ability is Hustle, which increases its attack but lowers its accuracy by quite a bit. So it is not good. It's struggling. Delibird is struggling. At least for now, however many millions of years in the future, it apparently thrives. Mantine. is neat. Never too much thought towards Mantine, but I've always kind of liked it. The Mantine Surf minigame in the Ultra Sun and Moon games were very fun. I really liked the Mantine Surf, and that's actually going to carry it quite a bit. Just thinking about that. Dude, I love Mantine Surf. Hope they bring something like that back in one of these later games. Skarmory, little known fact, Mantine's counterpart. Mantine is supposed to be the specially defensive wall, and Skarmory is the physically defensive one. Skarmory, I'm a big fan of. The design is cool, the typing is cool, and I think using it can be pretty fun. Yeah, fan of Skarmory. Houndour, however you pronounce this thing, is neat. Don't feel particularly strongly about it, but it's neat. Houndoom, I think is pretty cool, being a literal hellhound. It's also very gruesome. One of its Pokédex entries says that if you're ever burned by it, it will never stop hurting for the rest of your life. I don't know why sometimes the Pokédex just decides to say stuff like that, but it's funny, and I hope they do it more. I like Houndoom. Typing's also cool before it got ruined by another Pokemon later in Gen 7. Kingdra, I am a big fan of. Its stat distribution is weird. I don't know why they did its stats like that. It's got, was it 90 or 95 in every stat, which is a choice. I don't think I've ever seen someone use a physical attacking Kingdra in my life. So it's a little odd they did that, but I like it. Water Dragons are really cool typing. I always liked Horsey and Seadra. And Kingdra's just very cool. Phanpy is cute. Don't have a whole lot else to say about Phanpy. Donphan is pretty mid. It's kind of sad. Both of its other forms that it got in Gen 9 are both infinitely cooler than it is. This thing, its body shape is just so weird. I don't know. My feelings on Donphan are complex, but it's just put it out there. Porygon 2, I'm a big fan of. Porygon's here. I like Porygon 2 quite a bit more. I've always been a fan of the Pokemon that are unevolved, but are still very much viable, even compared to their evolutions. I don't like this as much as Porygon Z, spoiler, but I do still quite like Porygon 2. Stantler. This thing went unevolved for even longer than Murkrow and Yanma and all them, and it's even more egregious because this thing is. This is not a good Pokemon. It's ugly, it sucks, and it's irredeemable, kinda. Smeargle is an interesting one, because it's very difficult to balance a Pokemon that can learn literally every move, with like very few exceptions. I think there might be 1 or 2 moves it can't learn. And the way they balanced it is just giving it the worst stats of all time. Which is very, very funny, because there's a lot of very weird Pokemon that are stronger than Smeargle, or at least have higher base stat total. Smeargle is broken. But I do like the concept a lot, and it can be pretty useful. I'll put it about there. Pyrogue, I think, is a very solid baby Pokemon. One of the rare ones. It's not a friendship evolution. Its evolution method is really, really weird. But when you know what you're doing, it's cool. It can be kind of annoying to get Hitmontop though. But overall, I think it was a very good call to link Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan with a pre-evolution. And I think Pyrogue succeeded pretty well at that. And Hitmontop, probably just below Hitmonchan. I really like both of these. They both got different uses, like completely different play styles, but I do like both of them. Smoochum. Weirdly, this thing should not exist. I can't remember. I don't think this one is a friendship evolution. I think it, Elekid, and Magby are all just like level 30 or something like that. So that saves it a little bit. And I think I like its design more than Jinx. It's still like a completely pointless Pokemon. This thing really shouldn't exist. But it's better than Jinx. But that's not a very high bar. Elekid, here we go. This is actually, I think this is the best baby Pokemon they've ever made. I think it expands on the design of Electabuzz like a decent amount, having like a plug for a head. It's not a friendship evolution, although I think you could argue it still takes a little too long to evolve. And we did get Electivire anyway, so there's not really much missed potential with Electabuzz. It's not taking up any slots in the evolution line. I like Elekid quite a bit. Without a doubt, the best baby Pokemon. Maybe I should put it above Togepi. What am I doing? Without a doubt, the best baby Pokemon. I don't know why these two are so high. They should be down here. There we go. Magby is better than Magmar. Don't got much to say about it. It's still not a great design, but it's better. That's not exactly hard to do. Miltank. It's tough. This one could very well change later on, but I'm right now leaning towards putting this thing right here because it's obnoxious. I know Whitney is kind of overhyped. I definitely didn't struggle nearly as much last time I fought her. But this thing can still be just such a massive annoyance. I don't think I'd quite put it down here anymore. Like a few years ago, I definitely would have, but it is bad. It is really, really annoying. Blissey. What do I do with Chansey? Chansey's here. I feel about the same towards both of these. Not a whole lot of the design change, and it's a friendship evolution, yeah. But I think the concept is neat, being just a super tanky special wall, and it can be kind of fun to use sometimes. So I'll give it a little bit extra for that. Not too much. I don't really feel a whole lot for Blissey or Chansey. Raikou, however you pronounce this, is probably my favorite out of the legendary beasts. Still not a huge fan of them though. Never really have been. What about there? Entei is neat. Yeah, Entei's neat. I never saw its movie, so I don't have any bias towards that. I don't think I've seen any of the Pokemon movies. It's neat. Suicune. The design is cooler than Entei, but fighting against this thing is obnoxious. Because it's super tanky and just has a bunch of really annoying moves. But the design is cool enough to save it from going too low. Larvitar is a Johto Pokemon, arguably a Johto Pokemon. God knows you can't even get it in Johto. Out there, Pupitar. Doing this whole shtick with one of those pseudo legendaries is not great. I already don't care for the Cocoon Pokemon, and a pseudo legendary having a Cocoon stage. It's just not the greatest design. Tyranitar is very cool. I like how you can kind of see, or maybe that's just Mega Tyranitar. I think it's with both. You can kind of see the part with Pupitar in the middle there. I think it's a very cool expansion on Pupitar as a design. And it's fun to use. It's a pseudo legendary, so of course it's going to be good. I wouldn't rank it too high. Never been a huge fan of most of the pseudos. But I think Tyranitar is very solid. Get to you later. Oh boy. Lugia. In the span of a year, my opinion on this Pokemon has gone from like indifferent to kind of liking it a little bit. Nowadays, I hate this thing. I hate Lugia. It's going down here, and you know what? I'm gonna move Seeking up and out of the worst because it is still like really boring, and I do not like it at all. But I don't think it's on par with these. Lugia. Where do I begin with this thing? Lugia is a fraud. Lugia is a fraudulent legendary. It does nothing in its own game where it's on the box art. It does nothing in its own story. And whether you're playing gold or silver version, Ho-Oh is still the one with by far the most going on and the most lore. Lugia just loiters in a cave the entire time. Lugia has nothing to do. Nothing. And now let's talk about its other aspects. It's a psychic flying type for some ungodly reason, despite living in the ocean, despite like controlling the ocean or something. It creates whirlpools, right? It's like entirely connected to the ocean. It's not a water type. I don't understand. Its battle theme compared to Ho-Oh again, its counterpart. It's just like a collection of noises with no melody whatsoever. And the biggest thing is a big personal thing. Not really any objective facts here. Last year, I spent 2 weeks straight shiny hunting this thing. Not on a Heart Gone Heart Gold. I expected to take long on that. Didn't expect to get that super quickly. But also on a copy of Pokemon Shield, using it in Dynamax, trying to get it in Dynamax Adventures. And that period, trying to work with the AI in Dynamax Adventures was miserable. And I got the most unlucky I think I've ever been in Pokemon. I went well over 100 runs in Dynamax Adventures without seeing a single shiny, and I kind of just blame it all on Lugia. Doesn't really make much sense to, but I do. I hate this thing. I hate Lugia. It's crazy how short of a time period it takes to change my opinion of a Pokemon. But this thing, good God, I hate it. And big contrast, Ho-Oh is just significantly better in like literally every single way. I'm a big fan of Ho-Oh. Been a big fan of Ho-Oh for a while. One of the few good parts of the Johto games. Yeah, I like Ho-Oh. Oh, God, I need to... God, I hate Lugia. And last but not least, Celebi is neat. Psychic Grass is an interesting type. Not a very good one, but interesting. It being able to time travel is really cool. I think its design is cute. Don't feel too strongly about it, but I like it. I feel like nowadays, they probably would have made it a Psychic Fairy type. Or not Psychic Fairy, Grass Fairy type. I don't know why they didn't go back and change that. I guess they just only did that with normal types. Yeah, that does it for the main tier list. Now onto the Megas. Mega Ampharos, I think, is a really stupid design, and I love it for that. Making it a dragon type and just giving it hair again is pretty funny. I do wish it was faster though, or at least had some kind of priority electric move, so it'd be a bit more usable. If it did, I'd probably like it a bit more and bump it up to Slaughter 2. Or not Slaughter, I'm just going above Mega Beedrill. Mega Steelix is an interesting design. I think the like a ring of rocks floating around it is really cool, and all the crystals and stuff. Not my favorite, but it's still very cool. Mega Scizor. I feel like it's cool, but I feel like it doesn't change enough from regular Scizor. Both design-wise and ability-wise, it's not got a whole lot going on. Mega Heracross. Design-wise isn't the greatest, but it does have Skill Link, which is one of my favorite abilities. And I think that's very fun to use, so I'll put it up there. Mega Houndoom. It's a pretty cool design. Solar Power is not the best ability, but it's still decent. I'd probably put it just above Mega Aerodactyl. And Mega Tyranitar, like, I just don't think this thing should exist. Tyranitar was already good, and I don't think it needed a Mega. And then the Mega's design is just very, very boring. Kind of just too much going on. Not a big fan of Mega Tyranitar. But yeah, that should do it for this tier list. Gen 2. Don't think I have any big changes to make. If I do, it'll probably just be between now and the next video. But yeah, that'll do it for Gen 2. Next time, hopefully sometime within the next week or two. No promises, God knows something's going to happen. We're moving on to Gen 3, which I'll have a lot more positive things to say about. So yeah, I will see you in the next video.